وصحبه ومن والاه. Welcome everybody to the Safina Society Nothing But Facts live stream. Today is a Monday in which um, uh, we cover Asbab and Nuzul, the causes or the circumstances, not really the cause, the circumstances surrounding the revelation. And it's a sunny, yet pretty cold, I would say, not exactly sort of cold day here in the state of New Jersey. Where the winter's coming it's really around the corner. We already got some flurries of snow, which is to me a wonderful thing and a beautiful thing. But after this, we're going to go to the introduction to the Maliki Madhab. We have a stream. It's a stream, I guess, but it's a class. And it's a 3-part class, a crash course introduction on the Maliki Madhab. Okay. And I'm really excited about that. I have a PowerPoint. I have my books that I'm going to be reading from, and people will really get, and they're really going to get a good idea what the Maliki Madhab is all about, from start to end, so that you can navigate. Not only that, we also cover why it's wajib upon a common Muslim to choose a madhab, no different than it's wajib on a cancer patient to choose an oncologist, or someone who needs a surgery to choose a surgeon. It's wajib. You have no choice. And get this hair out of here so I don't look like one of these people who are trying to put bangs. That's the thing, with no offense, but to mention, you're not really supposed to be talking about women. I know that, but that it's a thing now to have hijab with a bang, right? And I'm like, what is the point? Liberal hijab. No offense to be mentioning that to the sisters. They may get upset that I mentioned that, but I can see it. You're doing it in public. So I ask questions in my head. It's like, is that supposed to attract me? What is the purpose of that, right? Who are you trying to attract by that? What message is that? And, it's just I can't say it's a minor thing because nothing in the Sharia is a minor thing. But at the same time, I don't need to be hating on that aspect of things because they already have enough challenges as it is. So they need every Muslim should support everyone, and people are weak. That's why, we all have weaknesses. In upholding the Sharia requires Sabr, and the Sharia mentions that the books of Tasawwuf, when they talk about Sabr, they say Sabr ala ta'at wa Sabr an al-muharramat. Okay, Sabr to do the right thing and Sabr to avoid tribulation, and Sabr ala al-bala, the things that are totally out of your control. So there's two things that's going to happen in the world. Either Allah's going to tell you things to do, or things are going to happen, which is Allah's will for you. And you can't, so you have those two categories of patience, and you have to have strength for that. So you should never really make fun of somebody because they don't have a strength that you have. And firstly, for us guys, we've never even had to have the test of hijab. Maybe we wouldn't have passed it. That's why Allah made us men, right? We wouldn't have passed that test. That's how we should look at it. So, anyway, what were we saying even? Oh, so I'm going to be reading from Qadi Iyad's Tartib al-Madarik and Sheikh Ahmad Tahir Ayyan's book on the Maliki Madhab, introduction. The first of the three is going to be Malik's biography, the timeline, how he used to choose his teachers, and who are his main influences, with the precursor of why follow a madhab and why the Maliki madhab in particular. And for that, we're going to be reading from Qadi Iyad's book, Tartib al-Madarik. He has a whole chapter actually saying the obligation of following a madhab, which is fun, interesting, the obligation of following the Maliki madhab. He says that when you learn about it, it becomes fard upon you. Why does it become fard? Because it is obligatory to follow the one who is most worthy of being followed. Okay, so in any event,
where's this going to be?
Okay, so where's it going to be? That is the $1 million question, because it's like you have to get on Telegram, and all the information and the links are shared on Telegram.
That's pretty smart.
Yeah, let me ask these guys. Assalamu alaikum. Hey guys, everyone keeps asking me where's the link to join this this course. Could you just send me a reply with the link? Because I don't know how it works. Like People have to join Telegram or whatever, and how do they get the link for that, etc. Yeah, I don't know why I haven't accepted the Telegram bug. Everyone's on Telegram and Discord. Discord, I get. It's like having a little Microsoft Office or Windows meets WhatsApp. That's what Discord is, right? Because Ryan told me that you have folders, you have files, you click, and when someone joins, you could see all the stuff that's in the past. Whereas when someone joins WhatsApp, we have to repost all the announcements, right? It's annoying because he doesn't see anything in any event. So that's what we're doing. And that's going to be the first section. The second section is Malik's impact on the main topics of fiqh, of aqidah, of hadith, of usul, and then the major the major features of the madhab. Then we get into the nitty gritty in the third session, where we talk about the mother books, the source books, ummahat of the Maliki madhab, the major authors, and there is a lot of names. And nobody should shy away from this and say, "Oh, I just simplify things for me." No, I'll tell you why. When you worship Allah based on a madhab, you are worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with certainty, because hundreds of thousands of scholars, independent of one another, unrelated to one another, disconnected from one another, have looked at this and they have affirmed, this is what Allah says, this is what the Messenger says. This is what Malik said about it. This was his ijtihad. Okay? And based upon that ijtihad, we can say that on that methodology, on this new matter, he would have said this, or the result would be this. Hundreds of thousands. So when we come, and in that third session, we say, now start listening to these names, and you realize this method, it's not just Malik said and we do it. Malik laid down the method. And then hundreds of thousands of scholars have applied this. So you're worshiping Allah based upon a very strong foundation. And that's why the idea of saying, well, all the mujtahids, they're just men and we're men and we could just always, okay, do it. Do it. So am I going to worship Allah based on one smart person or 100,000 smart people? Because that's my afterlife we're going here. If my kid is going to get a surgery or take a medicine, am I going to take a medicine, give him a medicine that one smart person said? Hey, Rai, could we do purple today? I'm into purple for some reason. Yeah. Yeah, nice. Am I going to give my kid medicine or surgery based on one smart person? Or 100,000 doctors over the past 30 years have signed off on this methodology, right? Which one are you going to feel more comfortable with? Someone says, well, why don't I just look at the sources myself? Go ahead and do it. And go to the woods, get the berries, right? And cure your own kid. Would you do that, right? Do you have time for that? So we're all muqallids on that. Now, I want to begin with a story, because a lot of people loved the story of the awliya that we mentioned, that the miraculous answered prayer. I'm telling you, you hear these things, Allah Ta'ala, the ijabah of his dua, it's with people. And the unseen, it's really not that far off. It just requires belief, rectify your aqidah, and avoid sins. And you will live with these things. And if you don't live with them, listen to the stories of the people who live with them. I'm going to tell you a story about a man. And the source of the story is a man living today as an Imam in Utah. Okay. His name is Sheikh Yasser. I never met him. I want to actually go out to Utah to meet him. He's a scholar he's an Egyptian scholar, and he's also a man who is very keen on in the zuhud and ibadah and dhikr and these things. And those are the types of people who have these experiences. So he has a neighbor, and this neighbor is from the former communist countries. And those Muslims from like Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan, they don't, Islam's like a memory for them. Like the communists came and erased all of that for multiple generations now. So he ends up, the father dies. And so he goes and he gives condolences to his son. And they did the burial and everything. So he said that it's like a habit when we bury somebody. It's always happens that within like 2 to 3 weeks, they'll see a vision of their loved one, and it will calm them down. It'll make them happy, right? It'll give them sakina. And this is not something abnormal. This is something that is mashhood for. It's testified to throughout the history of the ummah, and it's testified to by regular Muslims. This is not something just for the scholars, just for the people who are into ibadah and dhikr and these things. This is something it's just testified to across the board. So the guy looks at him. Now, the father was a physician in Azerbaijan. He ends up like learning that there is something called Islam and we're Muslims like way later in his life. And he admits, like, I know this is my deen, but I don't know anything about it. And it's amazing because there are like Circassian Americans here in America today who came over like 3 generations ago and in their 50s and 60s realizing, oh, I have a religion, right? And they discover it later on. It happens to people. Forget these countries. Arabs, Syrians, Egyptians who grew up with the elite and with the secularism and their parents siding with these secular regimes and living their whole life upon that culture and discovering way later in life. This is serious, right? This is something I should consider. So it happens. But the son is here in America, and the son was he got into like, Quran and Sunnah and Hadith and Salafi and stuff. He got into that, right? And that's understandable when someone is coming into Islam. It's like the first person who clicks with you or the first lecture that you like to hear, you jump on that. Whatever. It's we're not going to pass a judgment on that. So, but why do I mention that? Like, do I mention that like to put someone down? No, not at all. But because the sheikh said to this young man, he said, it's customary. You'll see a vision of your father, inshallah, or someone in the family will see that, and it will calm their hearts, right? And the reason I said that, because we know, and it's not something abnormal, that the Salafiyya, they're not really into these things, ar-ru'ya and all these things of the spiritual side. So he looked at him like he was crazy. Anyway, they maintain good relations, and that's why I'm telling you it's so important to maintain good relations with people. So he ends up, as a neighbor, dropping off this imam who has a separate career in business. He drops him off to the airport one day. This is a couple weeks later. And he notices he wants to bring up a topic. Like, he's looking at him funny. And he's like, what's going on? He's like, remember what you said the other day about the visions and the dead will come back to you? Because firstly, we don't even believe in death. Death just means you left this world. It didn't mean you don't exist anymore. You just moved on, right, to a barzakhi realm. It's just a different realm. So, but as the Prophet ﷺ was asked by Sayyidina Umar, أَمَعَنَا عُقُولُنَا? When we die, do we take our intellects with us? He said, yes, everything is with you, right? The Prophet said, Na'am. Everything is with you. Your consciousness does not disappear. Your soul does not disappear. You just move from one place to another. And that's why the Shaykh, this is so common to him, he called it the immigration process. You immigrated, you literally migrated from one abode, this dunya, which is all we know. And that's why it's hard to talk about this, because this is all we know. And the barzakh, we know nothing about it except what we get, of course, from revelation, from sunnah, but also in terms of what visions and we of the dead that have come back to us. Okay. And we have our trusted imams, al-Shafi'i, Malik ibn Anas, they've talked about it too. In terms of the experiences of the dead and those who just died and the visions of the dead, they talked about it, they trust it, they believe in it, so we believe in it too. So we know that a Shafi'i, for example, came to one of his companions in a dream after his death, sitting on a throne. And he said, by what did Allah elevate you? Was it your book, Kitab al-Umm? Was it your book, al-Risala in Usul al-Fiqh? What was it that Allah elevated you like this? He said it was because of, in the introduction, I believe, of al-Risala, or Kitab al-Umm, I can't remember, he wrote a special salah on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammadin kullama dhakarahu al-dhakirun wa ghafal an dhikrihi al-ghafilun. So he said, I've praised the Prophet, peace be upon him, for every moment that the heedless forget about him, and those who remember him, mention him, which means at every moment, right? So he said by that. So we believe in these things. And anyway, the sheikh is so accustomed to this, he calls it the immigration process. It takes usually 2-3 weeks to just adjust yourself. You go to another country, adjust yourself, then I'll find a payphone and contact you. Like that, right? It's going to take a while. So he said, well, my son saw his grandfather in the dream. And he said he was wearing a beautiful thobe, and he hugged him, and he said, in a few days, I'll come to your father. Like, tell him, in a few days, I'll come to your father. So a few days passed. Now, the man did his business trip. He comes back. He picks him up from the Utah airport. And on the way back, now, he looked like he kept glancing at him. He wanted to bring up a topic again. And he said, what is it? He said, this time I had a dream of my father. And he said, so what was it? He said, I was walking and I saw an amazing marble palace in this dream. Amazing marble palace. All white marble. And then solid gold tips, edges, designs on this palace. And it was an amazing marble palace. And I walk in to the palace. Lo and behold, it's my father's palace. He's the owner of this palace. And he finds his father sitting on a throne with a face of shock. Like, I can't believe I'm here. Like, how am I here? And he finds servants, like wonderful, handsome servants, pampering him, like youthful and beautiful servants, pampering the father, bringing him. And he says, this place is amazing. If you want water, you don't have to do this. It just comes in your mouth. Like the moment, and isn't that the description of Jannah? There's no means to ends. Like in this world, you have to take a means to an end. And there's a lot of wisdom in that. There's lessons, there's employment, there's a lot of wisdom in that. But in the akhirah, there's no means. So he said, this is an amazing place. If you want to drink water, you just think about it and it comes into your mouth. You don't have to move. Nobody has to go get it. So he then said, it's as if I'm in a mandatory vacation. Right? Like someone puts a gun to your head and said, enjoy yourself, right? And like a mandatory vacation. Imagine that. And that's how he described himself. But now, I don't know. I hope that he gave me permission to narrate this to everybody. And I hope he included this part. But I'm going to include this last part because I think it's very important. And it's not to insult anybody or say anything bad about somebody. But he said that he told the youth, he said, that's an amazing sign. And I hope you're happy now. Like you feel solace. Your father's been treated with generosity by Allah Ta'ala in this manner. And if Allah is generous, it's not like me and you being generous, right? When Allah is generous, it's the height of happiness. Like there's no happiness beyond that. So he said, well, it's just a dream at the end of the day. Like he didn't realize like this is haqq. What did Malik say about visions? When he said, can anyone interpret these dreams? Malik said, Abi wahyi Allahi yul'ab. With the wahi of Allah Ta'ala, meaning a true message from Allah. That's what he meant by wahi here. Because the Prophet called it wahi. Do we play games with this? This is haqq. If it's a true vision, of course there's vision from shaitan, and there's vision of the nafs, and there's vision from Allah. That's haqq. And each one has a sifa, an attribute, because there's no point in telling us there are 3 visions and you can't decipher between the 3. No, we can decipher. Just like Surah al-Baqarah tells us there's Muslims, kafirs, munafiqs. Is there a value in telling us there's Muslim, kafir, and munafiq, mu'min, kafir, and munafiq, without signs that we can decipher them? There's no point. Is there a point to tell us there's Islam, Iman, Ihsan, without any way of deciphering? There's no point in telling us this. So when the Prophet tells us this, There are ways of deciphering the false dream from the true dream from just the thoughts of yourself. And anybody who honestly reads the Turath, our legacy, these stories are all over the books. All over the books. So why would it be a surprise that it happens today? Did anything change? Have the heavens been modernized and they don't do this stuff anymore? Right? And the angels don't exist anymore? The ruh and the barzakh, that just doesn't exist? Is it only from the classical times with the dreamy era of the Arab Khilafah and stuff? No. This is the haqq. Whether it's now, whether it's the year 3000, whether it's the year 5030, if life continues to that, the same thing has to happen. And the samawat never change. The rules of the heavens never change. Our iman changes. So, but my point in saying this, that he didn't really take it as much, right? Whereas this would be a big bishara if you understood. There have been ulama who have held celebrations, like in terms of they would slaughter and feed the people out of shukr for these types of things, for the tuma'nina that it gave them, the bishara that it gave them. So he said that, it's just a dream. And the reason I say this is that it's so important for us to understand that you need iman to believe in these things. If you have a lot of sins, you won't believe in them. Even if it happens to your own self. Okay? You just have to have a lot of strength of faith. And that is buttressed by a lot of recitation of Quran, a lot of ibadah, and learning from the right people. Because if you learn from people and you trust people, your trusted sources tell you this is a bunch of nonsense, right? And it's a bunch of sihr and sha'wada. No, sihr and sha'wada exists. Sha'wada it's like superstitions that border upon like sinfulness and maybe even kufr. That's sha'wada. It's like paganism almost. We're totally against that. But it has a sign. And the haqq has a sign. And we believe one and you reject the other. That's why these things exist. So that we could actually, our iman could be strong. So he didn't really think much of it. And that's something that I believe that maybe in the future that'll change for him. But you need to be taught by the right teachers who don't mix between these things and pagan nonsense and superstitions and fakery. Yet at the same time, it does require us to purify our hearts and to do a lot of ibadah so that you can actually understand that Allah Ta'ala does send messages to people in this world that we live in. It just simply doesn't have, there's never a hukm shara'i on it. It never alters the aqidah. And it can be a yaqeen. It can be yaqeen. You can believe in it with absolute certainty. Yet we also hold that certainty is not the same as the certainty of the mutawatir matters of aqidah. So even when we say it's a fact, facts have levels. Facts have levels, right? I myself, for example, see something here on my screen. It's a fact to me. I see the book that I'm reading from, I see it from my screen. But for you to believe it, it's ahad. It's ahad. It's only you have to believe one person. That person is fallible. He makes mistakes. He couldn't even lie. He could commit sins every once in a while, right? So for you, that level of yaqeen is lower than for me, whom I'm an eyewitness to what's on my screen, right? So that's the concept of levels of yaqeen. So, and that's why certain things you may totally believe in it, but you only tell people who trust you. Why? Because it's yaqeen for you. But it's not yaqeen for anybody else. Nobody else has to believe this. And if you were to say, all right, listen, I'm not saying you're a liar. I can't say you're a liar. To accuse someone of lying is a legal status, right? You have to have proof. Kadhab, that's his status, right? You actually have to have proof that he's a kadhab. So you have to have a waqi', a reality, and you have to have his statement, and they must conflict. And he must fully be aware of the waqi', because otherwise he's mukhti'. I tell you that it's snowing outside, I could just be making a mistake. So that's a different thing. So, but you have to have proof that I'm fully aware of the waqi', which is the reality. Because what is a liar? A liar, he speaks what is opposite of the reality, right? And on one hand, he could just be making a mistake, and the other hand, he's intending it. So you have to have proof. There has to be a waqi' first, and there has to be ilm, knowledge, that he knows about it. And he's intentionally speaking that way, right? And he didn't misspeak, and he didn't misunderstand the waqi'. If you have that, then you could say he's a liar. So I can't see, I don't know what you know and what you see, so I can't call you a liar. But I don't have to believe you either. What requires me to believe you? A man comes and says, oh, I had XYZ happen to me. I can't prove it, right? I either trust the person and I believe you based upon my trust in you. So my belief in that incident is not like your belief. It happened to you. I'm just believing you. And to rely on, to believe in something based upon the one wit testimony of a faulty human being, meaning he has the potential to make mistakes and forget, is a low level of trust. It's lower than the person who experienced it himself. Okay. Unless the trustworthiness of this person goes through the roof. Like, for 50 years, whatever he says is true. Then it's different, right? Like the elders of the ummah, whose track record is public, is for everyone out there, and they don't have any of this, the errors, mistakes, when they transmit something. Okay? So this is extremely important concept to understand when we talk about spiritual matters. Where are we putting it epistemologically and why? That's essentially the kalam element. That's where ilm al-kalam, the knowledge of epistemology and the sourcing of evidence and the grading of evidences, it applies to tasawwuf big time. And if you don't know this, you can go astray in tasawwuf. And many turuq do this. Their sheikh will say one thing, they'll elevate it to qat'i knowledge that every Muslim must believe in. And if you don't believe in it, you're like, your iman is weak. That's not true at all. I don't have to believe in any of these things. Not one do I have to believe in it, but I can't call you a liar, right? So you have to understand this nature. We can take the same epistemology to claims in this world, criminal claims. If a person comes to me and he says, I was totally gypped by this person and abused, happens all the time, right? I say to that person, I can't say you're a liar, and I can't act upon what you're saying either. There's no proof here. Like if you were to accuse your neighbor of something, I would believe you. I can't say you're a liar, but I cannot now act differently towards your neighbor. I can't. If someone was to come and say to me, your employee totally mistreated me, blah, blah, blah. That's your narration of what happened. I can't say you're a liar. If I know you, I may believe you. But I cannot fire my employee unless you provide me proof. Oh, when we were walking in the hallway, he gave me a dirty look. And he said, you're just blah, 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 blah. Said bad things to me. Unless that I get 5 different people telling me this stuff, it's ahad to me. It's just a narration. I can't say it's a true or false. I can't say you're a liar. But I'm not going to fire him either because it's only one ahad narration. So you understand this is the value of ilm al-kalam. It's common sense. It's logic to me that you have to weigh evidences and you have to scale them. If there are any questions on this subtopic, just put it here real quick because it's an important subtopic and I want to make sure everyone understands it. Before we get to the Asbab and Nuzul, we're going to do that for a little bit, and then we are going to take open QA. Yeah.
So Imam al-Haddad, he talks about certainty versus faith. Is that the same concept? So the prophets, they have certainty because they actually experience truth.
Yeah, we can have certainty too.
We can have certainty too.
100%. We have certainty. Like, for example, if a person has an experience, that experience leads him to certainty, right? But when you tell me about that experience, it's much lower unless you have a standing with me in terms of your honesty, not just honesty, accuracy. Because some people say, they're not a liar. He doesn't tell lies. Which is true. But he may not also, his eyesight may not be perfect. His perception may be perfect. He may have seen something and jumped to a conclusion, told you the conclusion, right? So that happens all the time. Like you see one thing, that's a fact. You then make an assumption. There's a little leap there. Then you transmit the conclusion, right? And this happens a lot of times. It happens a lot where people will genuinely just make a little bit of a leap. And we call that al-ilzam. Ilzam is really important for us to know. Ilzam means it's a leap to a conclusion. Like I see one thing and I make the conclusion that because of A, B. Then I go transmit B. And people look at the honesty in my face. I'm totally honest. But I made a mistake. Right? I made a mistake. And this happens all the time. And people say, well, he looks really honest. That's true, but he could make a mistake. And al-ilzam, at-talazum, is the subtopic. You have to understand really well that certain things, you can't always make a leap. Let me try to give an example. If I see a guy, I don't know what kind of example to give, right? About a mistake in talazum. Okay, here's a great one. I asked Sheikh if someone is dancing to a song, right? Dancing to a song at the gay pride parade. That person's got to be a kafir, right? You're a kafir. He said no. He said that we need more evidence. Why? He said moving to a beat cannot be directly an implication of belief in what the song is saying. He says because a human can naturally move his finger to a beat, move his palm to a beat, move his knee to a beat, but not even know what's being said, or not believe in what's being said. So he said dancing, moving with something, right, does not necessitate, the beat is separate from the content. He said walking in the parade. He said that's not necessarily a thing either. He says because when you walk in a place, you may walk in a place and, whoa, there's a parade here, right? So, but if you know now the person purposely went there and purposely confirmed their presence there, then yeah, right? So that's the difference. But notice how the scholarship, the talazum element, that this action necessitates this, they really look hard at that and they break it apart, right? So next time you see somebody and he's at a coffee shop and now it's Thanksgiving, so soon it's going to be Christmas season and some of these Christmas jingles are on and you see someone moving their knee with it, it doesn't mean he believes in Christmas because the beat is one thing and the words are another thing. And their location at that place, okay? I saw a guy walking out of a restaurant that has khamr. Maybe he had an appointment there, didn't know there was khamr there, and sat far away from the khamr. I saw a man sitting with a wine glass at the table. Maybe he had a meeting with somebody, and that person brought another person along with them who wasn't even a Muslim, and that person ordered khamr, alcohol. So talazum is something that means it's the leap to a conclusion, and you have to break it up and be very cautious how you make a leap to conclusions. So that's why honesty is not by itself enough. Yeah. Where's the mic for this side? There is a mic right there. Pull that mic. At least put it close enough that people could hear. And Rai could see if it's connected to the... Okay, go ahead.
So with respect to Iman,
yeah.
On the flip side, because there's a hadith where the Sahaba, or a lot of the Sahabi, they said that they left the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then they wondered whether they were actually Muslims or not. Where does Iman fall, actually being considered a Muslim on that scale? When you say certainty is the highest level,
yeah,
and then as a Muslim, how do you know that you are truly a believer? I guess because he said that if you have regret and you don't like these ideas and these feelings that you have, then you are a Muslim.
Yes.
So how does that compare to this? Is it in the same context to this as well? I guess it's the other side of the coin, so to speak.
So the question would actually be, how does someone have any certainty or knowledge that they're a believer, right?
Yes.
Here, stick this over here because if you these mics are so sensitive, if you touch them, they can hear the touching. So the question would be that a person is a Muslim if they utter the kalima, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and none of their beliefs contradict what is known in religion by necessity. You can't say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, but also I believe Jesus is also the Son of God. Or I also believe that there's no resurrection. Or I believe that the day of judgment and heaven and hell is a spirit world. It's not physical. Like, you cannot hold a belief that contradicts what is known in religion by necessity. And you cannot do things that would defile or disrespect symbols of the word that you just uttered, because you negate it. So La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and then you would desecrate the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's a negation. You just negated that word. That's how simple it is. But who is a mu'min is somebody who the Prophet gave attributes to the mu'min. The mu'min, and that's why we're supposed to try to follow up with these attributes. They care about wudu. They love the ansar. They love going to masajid. These are basic things that where the Prophet ﷺ said, if people do this, testify that they have iman. فَاشْهَدُوا لَهُمْ بِالْإِيمَانِ. Right? And there are many such hadiths. And that's how we could also look at the hadiths of hypocrisy. And if you're fleeing from hypocrisy, for example, the Quran says that they don't make much remembrance of Allah. So you flee from that by making much remembrance of Allah. So when you see someone fleeing from hypocrisy and fleeing to the signs of iman, then we may testify that that person has iman. Sayyidina Ali was asked, are the Kharijites hypocrites? He said they flee from hypocrisy. They make much remembrance of Allah. Right? So, are they kafir? They fled from kufr. Right? They utter the kalima. So what are they? He said, they're our brothers, but they rebelled against us. That's how simple it is. So that's how D.I.T. Sarah, Didisera says, what are the attributes of a true dream? It's short. It's filled with symbols. It's symbolic. It has symbols. Dreams are not real in the sense of they're images. They're mithal. That's why you can have a dream that Allah speaks to you. It's not that Allah spoke to you in a real sense, but it is a message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Imam Ahmad had that, and he said it all the time. 99 dreams in which Allah spoke to him. And so it's short. It has symbols to it, and a person wakes up with a great feeling of sakina in their heart. And sometimes it's direct truth, like straight as it is. Right? That's a type of true dream. That means I dreamt someone knocked on the door and gave me a package. You wake up, someone knocks on the door and gives you a package. Like, that's actually a type of true dream. But it's not this. It's not. That's doesn't make it superior than other types. So that's an example of. Those are some of the attributes of a true dream. Sure, it's symbolic, and the world of dream interpreters is almost like the world of hadith scholars. The world of hadith scholars, they study hadith so much. When they hear hadith that's not true, they can tell right away. Like, there's no way. Even many of you, right? If I made up a hadith right now, you're like, that doesn't sound like hadith. Like, it just doesn't have the language and the style of a hadith. Or I can recite to a non-Arab a verse of the Quran and a verse of the Bible in Arabic, and they'll know right away, oh, that's not Quran. But he doesn't even know Arabic. So there's, in the same way that there's a style, there's a taste to Quran, there's a taste to hadith, there's also, like, the dream interpreter world, and I've spoken to a lot, they can tell the difference, right, between the two. That's another attribute on top of that. It's not really hardcore science, to be honest with you. Like, interpretation maybe, but to know the difference between a nightmare from shaitan, a thought in your own head, and a vision from Allah, that is not hard. Because anything that happens constantly to human beings cannot be too difficult. Think about it. The things that that happen all the time to human beings can't be too difficult, right? How do you go to the bathroom? Do you need to, it happens all the time. How do you procreate, right? You don't need education on this, right? When you get married, you don't need education. The education from Revelation on this is one thing. قَدِّمُوا لِأَنفُسِكُمْ. Meaning, do not go directly into procreation, but you should have foreplay first. قَدِّمُوا. It doesn't even say that in an explicit sense, like it wouldn't be befitting, right? But what the Quran says is have precursor. Have a precursor. Introduce it slowly. And that physically, when there's foreplay between a husband and wife, then the fluids necessary to render intercourse no longer painful for either side, they come out. Those fluids come out, okay? And therefore, the intercourse is not painful. If it's just dry, it's painful. So, قَدِّمُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. And then the Prophet forbade anal sex, right? And that's it. Like, certain things did not require much complication. And things that happen, it's a philosophy, right? Things that are of everyday life cannot be too complicated. That's how simple it is. My skin's unhealthy. Go get some sun. Put some oil on. Not the end, right? My lips are chafed. Drink water. Like certain basic things that happen all the time. What is sakina? Sakina is tranquility in the heart. It's a sense of tranquility. All right, let's read from Asbab al-Nuzul, Surah al-Infitar. I hate when they do this. Why do you do this to me? سورة الانفطار أخرج ابن أبي حاتم عن عكرمة من قوله يا أيها الإنسان ما غرك بربك الكريم. O human being, what has deluded you into thinking evil? Like the missing ما غرك, what's deluded you regarding your generous Lord? Well, there's a missing thing. What's deluded you in what way? Thinking evil of your generous Lord. And he says it has come down in Ubay ibn Khalaf. There's not a lot of entries in this. We're reading from Suyuti's Asbab al-Nuzul. Not everything has an entry. By the way, what do you all think of my new glare-free glasses? Did you notice a difference? Yeah. Glare-free. I didn't get the glare-free for a couple of years because there was the first wave of the technology had a greenish hue to it, and I didn't like that. So I didn't get glare-free for years, right? And then I got these again. I got the same. I'm like the type of person who I circle the website and the product number, and I just keep buying the same thing. Same thing. Pants, shoes, everything. I know the product name, and I don't have to think anymore. I don't have to sit and choose and pick. Boom. I got that. So, it's been way too long. I should have done this like 2 years ago. Ever since COVID, we had streaming all day, every day. Surah al-Takwir. أخرج ابن جرير وابن أبي حاتم عن سليمان ابن موسى قال لما نزلت لمن شاء منكم أن يستقيم. For whomever of you wishes to be upright. Allah revealed this. Whoever of you wish, be upright. لمن شاء منكم أن يستقيم. Abu Jahl said, okay, if we want to be upright, we can. If we don't want to be, we won't. Right? That Allah revealed, وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Now, this is really important. This is a really important verse in Surah Al-Takwir about qadar and will. Nothing that he's basically saying, oh, Abu Jahl, ya kafir, generally. Don't ever imagine that you're ever outside the will of Allah. And the will of Allah, the irada of Allah, there is one will in the entire universe. And that is Allah's will. Okay? Separate rida Allah from iradatullah. Rida Allah is what pleases Allah. And Allah Ta'ala is not limited to willing what He is pleased with. He wills what He is not pleased with for wisdom. We, human beings, our will is bound. We must do what pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And generally, we human beings, we would not do what we don't like to do. That's a general thing for human beings. If you do, you have a problem, such as an addict, right? You know that this is going to harm you to drink alcohol like this and get yourself drunk, yet you do it anyway. That we need an intervention here, okay? You're deluded about something. We can't let you act upon that and harm yourself, okay? You're deluded in thinking that someone's out to get you. This is, some people have the mental sickness like this. And trust me, there was a brother one time who was a normal brother, and then he began to get paranoid and to began to say that certain government agencies from around the world are out to get him. Then his wife, may Allah reward her, had sabr with him and took him to get treatment. He took pills, medical treatment, purely physical medical treatment, and he's healed from it. It's amazing. The mind, and to me, mental disorder is the scariest thing. It's the scariest thing, right? Because you don't know who you're talking to or what's going on here. But to me, it's one of the great feats of science to be able to treat this. What would they do in the old days? Who knows, right? What they would treat somebody who had this paranoia, paranoid schizophrenia. So he was, and when I say this, I'm not saying this to, of course, make fun. You make fun of that, Allah will bring it to you. He doesn't bring it to you, bring it to your family. This is the scariest thing. You cannot play around with Allah's creation. He will hurt you, right? You will get paid back what you did to other people. And if you don't get, this is a really scary thing. If you think you're tough, be tough. He'll bring it to your kids. I knew a person. He used to make fun of a youth. As children, he used to make fun of someone who was slow, mentally slow. He used to make fun of him. Everyone should stop making fun of him, right? It's like, you can't make fun of certain things. It's not his choice. If you make fun of something that someone's doing that is not their choice, you only have leeway in it if your mockery of it is a way to keep people away from it. Like if a group of people are evildoers and they have so much steam that they're influencing people to join them, and the only way to get people away from them is to mock them, that's permissible. This is why the Prophet ﷺ coined the term Abu Jahl, right? Abu Lahab. The Quran brought Abu Lahab. Why? He's leading people away from the truth. He's a terrible influence, and the way to get people away, to not be influenced by that, is to mock it. So you are allowed to mock certain things if that thing has so much momentum it's misguiding people. And if it's not, then you don't have the right to mock it, right? Because that's like you're kicking someone when he's down. So he used to make fun of this kid. He went on, had a successful career, very smart, married and happy. His son had mental disorders. And his son was like it was pretty pitiful. And you would hate to be around his son. Right? You would despise to have to spend time with his son because of the way he acted and talked and looked and everything about him. Like, not despise it in a moral sense, but physically. No one would want to be around him. No one would enjoy their time with him. Okay, live with him now and live with everyone making fun of him. The stubbornness of this person, he never made repentance. He never connected the two. I can't believe it. He never connected. This is where Allah says, أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ? Do you not have an intellect to connect the two? Al-aql does not just mean it's a connection. It says, what does aql do? It ties. When you tie something, what are you doing? You're connecting them all together. So the hobbling cord is a wrap around the feet of the animal that you're hobbling. Usually it's the camel, right? The camel is more rebellious than the horse. The horse, if you just tie the neck to a thing, it's tamed already. The camels are hard to tame. So they used to take a rope and they used to wrap the legs of the camel together. If he tries to walk, he won't be able to. He'll sit, right? He can't walk. It's called the hobbling cord. That's what aql is. You're connecting. So al-aql is connection between the two. You didn't connect. People told him. The cure for your son, he can be cured. Allah can do anything. It's your tawbah. Make tawbah. Make tawbah for what you did. And even that, even if he stays sick, it would be with rahmah. There can be rahmah in sickness, right? You want to, I personally hold, and Allah knows best, but Down syndrome is a terrible sickness. But it's a terrible sickness. Nobody wants their kids to have Down syndrome. But you cannot tell me that that sickness is the same as certain types of autism, where it's extremely difficult to have an autistic child. I pray for everyone who has one. I cannot imagine the tribulation they're in. When I see a child who has Down syndrome, you seem like the angels are floating around these kids, right? It is a sickness. It is a hardship. But I also believe that Allah has surrounded that hardship with some rahmah, if you ask me. There's no say that it's not a hardship on the family. It's got to be. One of the hardships is they die young. To see your own child die young, that's an extreme thing, right? Extremely difficult thing. But I also have to note that we all have seen. I believe a lot of people, right, have seen that people with Down syndrome put a smile on everyone's face. I was at one time at a masjid, right, where a youth with Down syndrome was there. And the way that he was reacting to the recitation, everyone was smiling. The whole masjid, like the way that it, because they're not conscious of themselves. It's pure, right? That's an element in this sickness that it's a positive. It's coming out of just total purity, right? And so there can be sickness with rahmah. So he may stay sick, but with rahmah, with lutf. Allah Ta'ala can make hardship easy. Prophet ﷺ said, وَتَجْعَلُ الْحَزْنَ إِذَا شِئْتَ سَهْلًا سَهْلًا. You make hazn is hardship. Huzn is sadness. Hazn with a fatiha is hardship. Allah, you have the power to make a hardship not only easy, but very easy. Sahlan sahla. Very easy. And it's not to say that the parents with Down syndrome, they're having it easy. We can't say that, right? And diminish what they're going through. But there can be some edges of rahmah with the hardship. So that's the concept and the idea here. So how we got to that subject, I can't. Mocking. So the mockery, right? The mockery of people has a place and it doesn't have a place. So you have to understand where it has a place. So when there is a tyrant, let's say the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, when they're going and they're bullying people in Gaza, and we mock them, you're mocking somebody that mockery is, you're not mocking like someone who's just committing, you're mocking something as a way, number one, to make people no longer sympathize with them, to take people away from them. That's where it's permissible. Otherwise, the Prophet was Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab. Okay? When the mockery is personal, then the Prophet, what did he do? He put the stop button. He said, Ikrimah, the son of Abu Jahl, Ikrimah is coming. Don't say Abu Jahl anymore. Do not mention his father anymore. Like that's the general meaning of that. Don't put down his father anymore. The son is here, and a son will still. A sensitivity to the father is to sensitivity to the father's side of Abu Jahl, not to the kafir side. Remember what we talked about, the iltizam and mulazima? Someone sympathizing with a kafir may be because of the relations they have and the past that they have together, not because of his kufr. So we have to also keep that in mind too. Someone says, I love Ronaldo, it doesn't mean he loves his kufr. Because, he's not a Muslim. We know that, right? It just means I love him as a soccer player. If I love Steve Jobs as an inventor, not as the jerk that he was, right? Because I wouldn't want to be in the same room with him. I would have wanted to work with him. I would have worked with him. Because he was, but I would have to have no strings attached. Like I can't have any other relationships. Because he will demand that, right? And after working with him, then maybe you can add on another relation. He was just crazy in that respect. But if I love the work aspect. I don't like his aqeedah or anything. So a talazum there. So Ikrimah had feelings towards his dad. Positive feelings. How about Abdullah ibn Ubay bin Salul? So the hypocrite is called Abdullah ibn Ubay bin Salul. His son is also called Abdullah. Many people get confused by that because the Arabs were not accustomed to naming after the father. But he named his son after himself. So, if I'm not mistaken, it could have also been that the Prophet changed his name from Abd something, Abd al-Uzza to something else. Allah knows best. I can't say for sure. But they're both called Abdullah. When Abdullah ibn Ubay had done something that was worthy of, it was treachery. He had said that I'm going to expel, when we go back to Medina, I'm going to expel these lowly Muslims, right? Isn't that an act of rebellion? So his son thought that this is he's going to get executed. So he said to the Prophet ﷺ, O Messenger, if you execute my father, let me do it. Because if anybody else does it, I might have something in my heart towards them. Yes, he deserves to be executed. He's a munafiq and a rebel, and he did a crime, committed a crime that's worthy of capital punishment. But he's still my father. I might have a feeling there towards the person who executes my father. So let me be the one who does it. So again, you can have a connection to somebody that's different than their disbelief. Okay, and why is this important to mention? It's all the more important to mention in a world that's all mixed up. Like everything is mixed up here, and that it brings into play the concept of adab when we talk about people and sins. And many people will think, "Oh, you're being soft. You're being soft with the enemy of Allah." No, I'm not being soft with the enemy of Allah. I'm being soft with the people connected to the enemy of Allah. That is such an important point. Like someone may commit a serious, sin and a serious harm to the community, and they're completely astray and they should be warned about, and they make your blood boil. But they may have a kid who's not. They may have a wife, a husband, a mother, a father, a best friend that's not. Why isolate that person? Like, why would you? So, well, if they don't like it, tough luck for them. That's not how life is. Relationships aren't like that. So you go off and you bash a group of people. You are also hurting the people connected to them. And the way that Allah's created the world is that there's connections. Everyone's connected. There's a reason for that. It's so that there's an increased chance of guidance. Ever notice that sometimes a righteous household, but their kids are just regular, and then a household that's just totally astray and the kid's amazing? The amazing mu'min, salih, is not needed in the righteous household. They're already righteous, right? That family, imagine all the souls are there and they're being assigned. Okay, you're going to be his kid. You're going to be his kid, right? You're going to be his parents. You would want the dud to be assigned to the righteous parent, to the really smart parent who can figure out every problem. Wouldn't it make sense that the challenging kid goes to that household, not to the household that's already astray? He's going to go further astray, right? Just trying to think of that logic. And the household where the kid is so pure-hearted, right? And so good and so righteous. Shouldn't he go to the parents who need dua when they die? Wouldn't it make sense? Like, that's like logically. If you ever see that, that's the logic behind it, right? And Allah knows best. So we're just trying to see the wisdom, we should say. Not the logic, but the wisdom of why is it that there are wonderful people in homes. It seems like these parents don't deserve such a wonderful kid. That's exactly why he's there, to guide them. So and then, oh, you're a great person. I can't believe his kid. That's why that kid was assigned to that family. So that family could pull him back into the right direction. So we're trying to look at the wisdoms of Allah's creation here. So there's never a time that you're going to be outside the will of Allah. Abu Jahl is sitting here saying, if I want to believe, I believe. No, we say you're never exiting the will of Allah. We human beings tend to do what we love. Allah is not constrained to that because He has knowledge, right? He has knowledge. So He's not He's not bound to only do what has an immediate benefit. You don't make examples to Allah. وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. There's no analogy with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you have sometimes when someone has an immense amount of knowledge and experience in a field, a human being, they'll take an action that you don't understand. Right? Allah Ta'ala's creation of many painful things, and inexplicable to us. The creation of Iblis, the being down here in the dunya. Messengers only coming every few hundred years, for example. You would think immediately, that's not, you should send messengers all the time, everyone would all believe, and chain up Iblis so we'd all believe and be good. Well, that's not, clearly Allah knows better. That's not going to achieve the goal, the greatest goal. When we all come on Yawm al-Qiyamah, we will see the amazing result of all this. We can't see it. And I love this, the Persian poet said that we're like an ant that's traveling on a massive Persian rug. The ant just sees red cloth, blue cloth, white cloth. He doesn't see the pattern. And nothing makes sense to him. Like, why is this one red and this one white? Why is this thread blue and the next thread is light blue? This makes no sense to me, right? Yeah, because you're like an ant. Lift that ant up and let him look down, and boom, you'll see an amazing وَبَصَرُكَ الْيَوْمَ حَدِيد. Allah says, you will see perfectly the great wisdom of why Allah created Iblis, why He created pain, why He allowed ignorance to flourish in the land, why He allowed oppressors to rise up, why sometimes honest people don't get rewarded for their honesty. All these things you will see the wisdom for all this. So Allah Ta'ala's will, His irada, always has a wisdom, and no human being will make a decision that was not preordained for him to make. In other words, all your decisions, whether I want to put my hand up or down, if I put my hand up, that was in Allah's will. If I put my hand down, that's Allah's will, right? In other words, I can't even any choice. And in our understanding of qada and qadr, one of the interpretations is that all of qada and qadr is written. And so you are choosing one. It's written in the way of the branches of a tree, right? Or the veins of the body. Or you ever see what the lungs look like on the inside? The roots of a tree. That, okay, today Ryan has a choice to either do his schoolwork or to come to nothing but facts. If he does his schoolwork, this is what's going to happen, right? If he comes to nothing but facts, this is what's going to happen. It's all ordained. Both choices are ordained, right? If Allah doesn't want, and then if he chooses A, well, then this is what's going to happen. If he chooses B, then that's what's going to happen, right? Now, if Allah doesn't want something to happen, you can't choose it. One thing Ryan cannot choose is to be 50 years old today and graduate from school. He can't choose that. You can't be 50 because Allah didn't want it. If Allah does not want something for you, it'll be outside of your ability to choose it. All right? Every one of us, we can disobey Allah where we are today or obey Him. You can't disobey Allah yesterday. Go back to yesterday and disobey Allah there. You have I have the choice to obey or disobey today. You don't have the choice to do it Sunday. You don't have the choice to do it on Mars. If Allah doesn't want you to do something, you can't choose it. So think of the dichotomy of the choices we have and the choices we don't have, right? I want to obey. I could pray or not pray. I can't do it floating in the air, right? Without being in an airplane. That's the idea here. Okay. So, وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا إِن شَاءَ اللَّهُ. Don't ever imagine that you have a choice that is outside what Allah ordained. So, and just because something happens in the world does not mean Allah loves it, and that is the liberal usul. Liberal usul al-fiqh. And their morals are based upon the simple idea that just because it exists and it's not harming anybody, then it should be okay. Is that not the usul of the liberals? That's their methodology of deciding what's right and wrong, right? So when they tell us like trans people exist, so right, does that make it right? And they're not harming anybody, so that doesn't make anything right or wrong. That's not our usul or anyone who's with common sense's usul. So the idea of something existing, Allah put it into existence, does not mean He's pleased with it. He may put something in existence and the entire world agrees with it and it's wrong. Right? Simple as that. Right? It has nothing to do with right and wrong. And it has nothing to do that I have to accept it. The whole world's doing it. Wait a second. Didn't you guys... Well, the whole world is now accepting of the LGBTQ agenda. Didn't you guys teach us in school that if everyone jumped off a cliff, would you jump off too? Didn't they teach us that in school? Right? It's like the oldest thing in the book. But hold on. You guys grew up and you all jumped off the cliff because everyone was out jumping off the cliff. And you're telling us jump off the cliff too. Hold on. Everyone's doing it now. Wake up. It's 2023. Right? That's not usul for us. So a thing may be willed by Allah to exist, and we are obligated, okay? We are obligated to be against it, and to fight against it, and to disagree with it. Okay? All right, let's open up the Q&A before we go to, let's see what these brothers, if they answered me in terms of where the link is. They didn't answer me. Ya Jama'at al-Khair. Hey, Abrai, what Zoom should we join as? Yours? We're going to join them. Yeah, and then they're going to give us the... ArcView? But what do you have logged in right now?
I have mine.
Ryan?
I have to go at 3:45.
But is ArcView Asifina logged in?
I could do that right now.
Okay. All right, so here is the link. I'm going to put the link up for everybody now. Oh, yeah. Got to get the Oz to sign in here. All right, let's take the Q&A here. Yes, go ahead.
How can one learn the lesson Allah is trying to teach them? Allah is teaching them through the difficulty.
Repeat.
How to derive lessons from hard times.
How to derive lessons from hard times. That's also something that I think that it's all about. The first step is belief. Is to believe that that there is a wisdom behind this. And how do you believe that? By remembering the source. Where did this hard, bad thing come from? Now, just because, this is also another mistake people make, just because we hold in a belief that everything is from Allah, does not mean that He wants us to accept everything. So, my relative is going astray. That's from Allah. But does that mean, okay, that I have to accept it? No. What does the Sharia say? The Sharia is also from Allah. The Sharia says fight against that. Struggle against that. Try to give him dawah. Try to forbid the wrong. Don't let him corrupt the rest of the family. So I understand this is a test from Allah Ta'ala, but there's also a Sharia for how we handle this test. That's also very important to understand. So you got to have the belief of where it's coming from. That will change your attitude towards it. Your nervous system will be kicking up all sorts of chemicals into your brain, as if to say, until you say, well, hold on, calm down. It's from Allah. Oh, okay, I can calm down now. Once you calm down, you could think. Okay, if it's from Allah, what is the divine names? The wise, the knowledgeable. What does Allah say about His will towards the pious? towards people. He's not pleased with them to go in kufr. So all of his actions are for people to come towards faith. Okay? So if I have this foundation, then I'm going to start to see the wisdom, right? I'm going to see the wisdom of why this is happening or that is happening. So that's the concept and the idea here. Okay? You have to have those foundations. All right, go ahead.
Vital question. Invited to a Thanksgiving dinner. They're asking if they can say Bismillah on haram food.
No, you can't eat
It's
it.
going to create an awkward situation.
You got to get ahead of the game. Like, Muslims with non-halal eating family, whether they're Muslims or they're not believers, one of the ways to get ahead of the situation is to buy the turkey yourself. Volunteer to buy the turkey yourself. Like, you got to get way ahead of this. It's Monday, the dinner's Thursday, right? Oh, your mom said she bought it already. Well, go in there and buy it, bring the turkey yourself, swap it out, right? Find a way to do it, right? Yeah, swap it out, right? Swap it out, open it up, and stick it in the bowl to defrost so she doesn't see the label, right? The new label, right? But you got to find a way to do it. Where there's a will, there's a way. That's the only thing I could tell you. I feel for you. There's a lot of families who have this, right?
I remember like
Situation.
first ever Aqidah dars I took with Sheikh Murad.
Yeah.
Like, I won't get into the details of it, but like saying Bismillah over haram food, thinking that you'll make it halal is like very grave.
Yeah,
matter.
it's a
not
mockery
like-
of religion, to be honest
Yeah.
with you. It is a mockery of religion. Next question.
Would it be mubah to require a psychological evaluation from a potential partner when looking to get married because they've been burnt in the past?
A psych eval? Yeah, you can get a psych eval. Nothing wrong with that. You can also have them take. I think that guy is not going to come back though. Hey, let's get to know each other. Okay, here, take this. Make sure you're not nuts. It's a bit insulting, but maybe you could package it in a way, like you could say, for example, let's both take request documents from each other, like a medical report to know that there are no STDs here or sicknesses, credit report, and a psych eval. Like, if you bundle, tuck the psych, all right, we're doing all these things. She's doing it, I'm doing it. But you come to me and you say, you give me, well, why don't you give me yours too? I think if you're asking for a psych eval, you're socially not with it, right? You are socially not with it, to be honest with you. You don't realize that that's insulting to somebody, right? The best psych eval is asking about people. Like, hey, his mom, what's he up to? His aunt, what's he up to? His friends, what's he up to? His imam at the mosque, what's his deal? And you ask about these things, some truth will come through. But if you have to take the psych eval, tuck it into a whole bunch of documents, right? That just seems that it fits with those documents. And Allah knows best.
I don't want to open a can of worms.
Yeah.
What about prenups?
Prenup? Like what?
I guess when it comes to if something happens, dispensation of profits or whatever.
Yes, you should have that agreement. There's no such thing as in our Sharia that the man divorces a woman and owes her any money. He does not owe her money after the divorce. He, of course, he has to take care of his kid 100%. That he owes. And she may eventually, the food will be all mixed together, so she may benefit from that. So if he sends over $200 for food, and then she buys cereal, it's not going to be that only the seventh grade, the kid who was like 5 years old or something, that's his food, and this is my food. It does get all mixed up, right? He's eating from it. Yes, she may eat some from it. It's impossible otherwise. Happened during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Not in this case, but in the case of an orphan. So the orphan was somebody who the Quran said, do not eat the wealth of the orphan. So they would take the orphan's money, buy his food, keep it to the side, but you can't always estimate what people are going to eat, so the food is rotting. They told the Prophet ﷺ, right? But then revelation came with rukhsa that the food may be mixed up as long as he's eating and you're not stealing from his money. That's the idea. Yes, go ahead.
And tied to that, I guess there's a new trend now, I guess, advice from certain Muslim attorneys, and I'm not saying one or the other is right or wrong, but what are the fuqaha saying about not getting legally married, but just getting Shadee married?
The fuqaha do not accept to be involved in a marriage that is Shadee only, because in the future, the rights, Shadee means an Islamic marriage versus the civil marriage in the courts, because it's been witnessed over and over and over that there are rights that cannot be attained without the court, right? So they don't accept to be involved in such marriages. They have to make sure that the marriage is there civilly so that she can get all her rights. Yeah, because the fuqaha and the scholars and the imams may have legal, they may have Sharia knowledge, but they have no executive power, right? I can't do anything for you. So the state has to do that. And that's permissible to go to the state for that reason. If it's something that is your right, I can go to a state that is a non-Islamic state and government and police to get something that's my God-given right. So we can do that. Revert Tax says, what is the ruling on masturbation in Islam? Is it makruh or haram? It's haram. It's forbidden because the Quran says you have what your spouses and what your right hand possesses. And فَمَنِ ابْتَغَى وَرَاءَ ذَلِكَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ Subhanallah. It's skipping my mind. Taghun. Is it? I can't believe it's skipping my mind. Surah Al-Ma'arij. Al-Adun. They passed their limit. Yeah, they passed their limit. So everything beyond the spouse of sexual pleasure is haram. If they create a robot for you, if whatever it is all haram. Anything except your wife or your husband. Yourself is haram. Why did Allah limit sexual pleasure like this? To force you to get married, right? Force you to get married, then you can have some kids and you can populate the ummah and you can learn to responsibility and you can do all these things. So to jam us into marriage. There's a reason he's jamming us into marriage. A prenup is something that there is a aqd. Every marriage has a contract. And any reservations that you have, bring it out before the marriage, put it in a contract. Okay? And that's something that is age-old. It's allowed. The aqd, the contract, right? So you don't just get married and not discuss these things. You have to discuss these things well in advance. And what makes sense, to bring it up now or to bring it up after the fact, which many people say, well, I don't want to scare her away. I don't want to scare him away. So they don't bring it up. And then what they end up doing is living with it like under the rug, under the surface. One day it could be a problem for you. So bring it up, everything you want now, right? And if you disagree, you better disagree early on than later on. You got to go? All right, man.
I do have one final question.
Shoot.
This is for Noah as well. A lot of people have been asking for a long time, when are we going to have this NBF video for the theme song at the end of the show in the beginning?
Oh, that. Noah's putting it together. Yeah, he's going to put it together for us, inshallah. We have... Yeah, we have to... He's going to put it together and we're going to put it out because we do have a theme that we use at the end of this, and we're going to put the whole thing out in a video, inshallah. Take care. Assalamu alaikum. All right, let's wrap up because we got to shift over to the Maliki fiqh, introduction to the Maliki Madhab, and we got to see who's going to run that because Ryan's got to go. Everyone's got to go. Oz can't make it. Habib can't make it. I don't even know who's going to run it. So, yes. Who?
You can post a link for this in our group chat?
Can you? You have your phone? It's dead. I'll do it then. All right, folks. Last question. It's Vitamin Noor says, in Maliki fiqh during salah after the first 2 units in a 4-unit prayer, like Dhuhr, Asr, or Isha, can you stand for the duration of 3 Subhanallah in place of Surah al-Fatiha? If you're praying by yourself, you must recite Surah al-Fatiha. Surah al-Fatiha is a fard. You cannot skip a fard on purpose. You nullify your salah on the spot. If you forget a fard, you can make up for it by just in your mind canceling that raka, bringing another raka, and then do sujood as-sahu. But you cannot intentionally leave off the Fatiha. The only time that you're not obligated to recite Fatiha, when you're praying behind an imam, you don't have to recite Fatiha. You could just stand there. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله